Hello. I first started writing this story as a creative writing class assignment in the fall of 2022. And about a year after I first started the first 7 pages, I decided to continue it, just for fun. And now, writing the latter majority of the story, it's the last semester of my high school years. The last few weeks. It's an exciting and melancholic time of life. That's partially why I incorporated some aspects of my favorite classes, particularly the math. I didn't always enjoy school at first, but it's melancholic because I did enjoy it. And that's primarily due to my teachers and professors. It is those admirable people put in charge of my academic career that helped me to see school in a new light, with their own excitement and enthusiasm and aspirations in life. I don't think they know how much of an impact they have made in my life, how significant they are to me. I don't even think I'll know, because I'll thankfully never have to live a life without them helping me to open my academic doors. Now it's time for me to take my academic career into my own hands as I graduate and start college. And I thank all of my teachers and professors, and I dedicate this story to them as a means of my gratitude. I am Hunter Murray, and this is The Contract. The 18th of September, 2023.
Philip, have you ever really observed something? I mean, not just see it or remember it, but make an active effort in noting details about that certain thing in your mind. My study was mostly quiet. A Nag Champa incense burned on the table behind me. Philip was writing down the experience of a recent escapade that required our attention. The papers on my desk pertained to that case. Now, a brand new client stood framed in the doorway of my study. My average client is a well-to-do person who unwillingly finds themselves in a predicament with which they either cannot or choose not to approach the police. Sometimes people have nothing but their plea. If I find it worth the effort, I will help them without cause. However, people know about me due to my more infamous cases involving the police, government agencies, and international scandals. I seldom ever enjoy those because the disaster often originates from the corruption of all those involved. Then I'm the one to wash everyone's hands. Thankfully, though she had not even said why she came as of yet, she would almost definitely bring me a type of case that I find most intriguing. She just stood there, holding her wide handbag by its long leather strap as her long blonde hair dangled strikingly down by her face, which one could almost assume would be perfectly hidden underneath an impeccable display of makeup. And it was, aside from one singular absence. Her lips were lathered in a deep red, and even her forehead was dusted in a light pigment close to her own. However, she wore no mascara, or anything on her eyes or beneath them. Her appearance blended together very well, but set upon the trace, one could clearly see the stark absence of cosmetic aid near her eyes. There had to be a reason, for there's no point to do the rest of your face and then skip your eyes.
I suppose not in any particular way, only if I was looking for something specific, and I think I'd take note of important things.
He set down his pen and squeezed his hand, leaning back in his leather chair. He continuously glanced at our aesthetically stunning client, but I knew her comely appeal was not the reason. Both Philip and I were preoccupied when she entered, but even when I finished, I made no effort to turn my attention to her. Instead, my careering mind kept jouncing between urgent concerns. I didn't mean to waste her time, but many pressing things weighed on my exhausted mind like bricks, and they still required focused, laborious attention. "Philip!" on the other hand, was anxiously awaiting the story of our young client. My question beckoned in the serious air and transitioned the entire atmosphere to welcome our client with a different present than eerie silence. It allowed him to mentally rest, though my questions are rarely mentally sedative. Nonetheless, he welcomed it with a response. I thought about his response, and then made a few deductions about our client, in addition to her notable makeup arrangement. Important things don't always stick out like a sore thumb. Think of this. How many times have you noticed me lighting an incense?
Countless times for sure.
And you should also know, better than anyone else, the particular order in which I light them. So I ask you, what is it?
Well, I never paid attention to that.
Precisely. And yet, if I were in hidden danger, I would alert a close companion to me with a sort of change in my routine, so as to not raise suspicion, thus allowing me to call for help without so much as a hint of my beacon. So, Philip, what do you make of our client?
Well, she walked here, is well off monetarily, and ordered a blizzard with a group of 3 friends at Dairy Queen last Saturday.
That's good, Philip. I smiled as Madison's red eyes widened with shock. She's also 15 and is recovering from a cold. You see, Miss Wyzack, your shoes are solid with damp and mud. You did not drive, but can obviously afford a car, and your nose is raw. However, it is not allergies, else you would not have resorted to a cough drop. That is Ricola, I smelled, is it not? You can deduce your wealth from your handbag, jewels, and clothing. However, knowing of your trip to the local Dairy Queen is pure happenstance, not at all deduction. We do happen to enjoy the occasional ice cream, and Philip's memory is remarkably astounding. How may we help you?
I came to ask if you'd find the identity of a man who keeps calling me. I try to block him, but he gets through with different numbers. I wrote it down here. He also manages to block his number somehow. I heard you're willing to help when the police can't. I heard you're trustworthy and fair. I heard that some people can call you the Bloodhound, namely people you caught.
Why didn't your immediate guardian accompany you to my study?
I live with my aunt, and she's busy. She works a lot, so I can focus on school.
Your parents? Also, welcome yourself to sit after your track.
My mother works heavily as a cyber technician from some out-of-state company, and my dad is somewhere. My mom is too busy to watch me when I was little, so I never moved out of my aunt's. She pays my aunt every month. My aunt is a lawyer, but is not as busy as my mom, so she can watch me.
That's probably a tidy little sum your mother provides. Is there a reason for it?
She's bound to a legal contract till I'm 18, but I don't know how much she pays.
Did you have to move cities when your residence switched to your aunt's?
I didn't. Always lived with my aunt. She's seen my mother a couple times, but not too much. However, she lives in Denver, and my aunt lives here in Pueblo. I guess I should tell you about the phone calls. They're telling me, in a very disturbing ways, all these bad things about my aunt. They say to leave her in essence, that she's a bad person and only holding me for the money.
Has your aunt received these messages?
I think so, but she wouldn't tell me about them, which I could see why if they were like the ones I got.
She shifted again in her chair, this time wiping her eye. The absence of mascara. It's her emotions. Despite her appearance, she is barely stable and together. How old is your mother?
She's 37. Do you mind terribly if I use the bathroom?
Not in the least. There is one upstairs, atop both flights of stairs and down the hall. May I look at the phone records while you're gone?
Sure. Thank you.
She got up and left the room.
Is there a reason you sent her to the furthest bathroom in the house?
Of course, Philip. And this is the second farthest. Do you notice what I notice?
I noticed that the poor aunt is targeted, but I don't know why.
Do you notice that her aunt is not such a busy lawyer? Bad lawyers are the ones without clients, and therefore without a means of support. Do you notice that she is wearing high-end clothing? Those brands are quite expensive, and her handbag is genuine leather. Do you notice that her mother has a high-end job that encompasses technology daily? Let us not be blind to the fact that her mother must be in debt, for she had Madison at 22 years of age, and her schooling expenses would have incurred near the same time. For by that, you could easily disguise your voice electronically, especially if you're experienced through both education and employment. as a cyber technician. As such, do not indebt your deductions to the fact that the voice is masculine. Furthermore, her mother also lives in Denver, and each of those phone messages originated from a number with a 303 area code. I handed the paper to Philip. He took it, scrutinizing the page before he looked up at me.
That's Denver's area code, isn't it? Do you really think her mother would do such a thing?
Her mother's emotions are not out of place, but her methods are mapped. When a 15-year-old walks to a study by myself, I suspect something is off about her family. Maybe not. Still, in addition, her aunt may not be the best lawyer, but she nonetheless has experience, enabling her to write a binding contract. What sent me down this path was the latter statement regarding her aunt.
Saying she's only doing it for the money. Her mother's trying to drive the girl away from her aunt since she couldn't drive them apart herself. Of course, but how do we help her?
What we can do is visit her mother directly. For people who walk down such demented paths as these will not stop at obscene phone conversation. It will eventually deepen without the aunt's cooperation, but we will see the mother first. I have no doubt that the aunt is hardly more than greedy, if that. But of her mother, I cannot be sure. Madison returned at that moment. She didn't know what to do with herself. We sat in heart-shattering silence. She could tell something happened. Philip moved to a far wall, somewhat staring at the crucifix, and I sat unmoved, staring downwards at nothing specific. Neither of us seemed to acknowledge her presence, but it was her presence, in combination with the circumstances, that obliged such a response. I thought about what all I could disclose without precipitating unneeded upset. My eyes closed. Her mother may not care about Madison, but I do.
Well, can you help me?
Yes, I can, Miss Wyzack. Return home. Philip and I will see you there safely. Then wait, and we will guide you from there.
But do you know what's happening?
We will see. I cannot say for sure.
I believe you already know. I believe you already made up your mind. Please don't keep this from me. Tell me. Please.
Her lips throbbed and her eyes wept under the suspense of awaiting my response. Sometimes I forget the emotional responses of people my age. It wasn't so long ago that I was a child. For the most part, I still am. She didn't go into detail about the phone messages, and I didn't need her to do so. She successfully conveyed the information, but what she didn't say was obviously traumatizing beyond acceptability.
He called me a...
It's okay.
I haven't even kissed a boy.
She broke down and let loose her river of emotions that she kept to herself for the longest time. The steel facade she feebly constructed to make her emotion as robust as her appearance was effortlessly crushed into the sheer distress in her young heart.
You have nothing to do with your aunt. Your mother is...
Philip!
My mother? So you do know.
She swung her handbag around and threw it at my desk, knocking down a small stack of books.
To think I trusted you.
She fell down to the ground, her hair creating a blonde bulwark to hide herself away from us. Miss Wyzack. Madison. Trust me. Upon hearing me say her first name, she stopped sobbing, and she looked up at me with her red, hurting eyes. I know how much you hurt.
You've never felt what I feel now. What I feel is piercing through my heart. You sit here dressed in your formal attire with your fancy study, looking down at the rest of us like chess pieces beneath your emotionless throne while we have to struggle through the hardships. Even when we're broken, you don't know how to feel to be like us. You just know how to win the game.
But I do know, Madison. You do not do what I do, and somehow miss the grievously tragic burden of betrayal, delusions, theft, extortion, abuse, abandonment, envy, regret, pain, and death. In your fortunate case, we should thankfully be able to avoid loss of life. But I still see and can feel for myself your built-up, painful, and execrable emotions. They tell of how disgraceful these messages were, and to what strikingly vile lengths your mother resorted in attempts to stop your aunt. She doesn't know you, her daughter, so of course your feelings are not her predominating objective. You are a victim of something simple, driven to dreadful means by corrupt and ineffective methods. And that is what I will help you settle.
He is unparalleled in sympathy as well as in knowledge.
Thank you.
She rubbed her relieved eyes and sniffled once more. Then she stood up, shyly twirling her delicate hair, and finally smiling, the true and joyous smile.
Put your faith in us, Madison.
I will. Thank you.
Philip grabbed her hand and began walking her upstairs. I turned to attend the small fire burning on my desk that started when Madison knocked over the incense. I heard both Philip and Madison gasp when they looked over, but I knew the fire was there the whole time. I simply took a book and smashed the fire out with one single ashy thud. Let us go. Remember what I said. We will help you from here, but you must work with us. We will drop by our residence this evening. Rest for now, and take your mind off this matter. I then picked up Madison's handbag and an envelope that had fallen on top of it. I opened it by my own persistent inquisitiveness. The letter was unfortunately extraordinary. I swept the papers off my desk with one wave and opened the letter.
What's that?
What do you make of it? I leapt over my desk and showed it to him.
The language is a little hard to interpret, but from what I can tell, it says he wishes his identity to remain secret and that a certain female companion has sensitive information on him, probably financial or some sort. He needs to make sure she can't do anything with it.
Do you notice the complex and elding language with which it is articulated? The zip code on the return address is 20500. The speed with which it arrived as it was sent only yesterday. That it is not stamped with postage from Denver, which is where all Colorado mail cycles. And the fact that identity is only important for individuals high in the social class. Individuals whose power rests in the hands of their reputation.
I'm still not following. I kind of get it, but all I can gather is that it didn't go through the usual postage system and that the zip code is nowhere near here. What do you make of it?
I should say that we will be seeing quite soon the President of the United States. Nevertheless, Miss Wyzack is our priority. The President will have to wait and hope that I attend to his matter, which, considering the throbbing in my leg, I'm not sure I will.
You would dismiss the president?
Depending upon the matter, yes. I sat down and wrote a response to his letter, indicating my present commitment to another case, and my, if at all, delayed involvement.
Oh, Madison, where's your mother's residence?
I don't know how to pronounce it. The street name. Here.
She handed him a piece of paper with an address on Beguile Street, and we took her to her aunt's house. Then we were off to visit her mother, making one pit stop at the post office to drop off the letter for the president.
What are we gonna do?
I'm not sure. It depends upon her response. Her mother, that is. We will hope she admits to her fetid deeds and agrees to stop. Then we will help break the contract between her and her sister.
That is, if there is a contract.
There has to be. It is not a guess. I have heard of her aunt. Attorney Wyzack is not the most deft lawyer in all of Colorado, yet her office is located right off the Riverwalk, and we just dropped our client off at a multi-million-dollar home and a golf course. That money has to be from his sister, who is wealthy enough to live in downtown Denver.
But what if she doesn't cooperate?
Then we will do our best to guide her to the right decision. If she fails to take it, we will take it for her.
And what's that?
Philip, I don't know everything. Most of everything subsequent to our meeting Miss Wyzack depends upon meeting her mother and her aunt. If absolutely necessary, we will cut her off from her daughter, disabling any farther phone calls. That would be wretchedly despondent, but it would protect Madison. And after that, we would proceed to break the contract, regardless. In any event, We will break that contract. Our highest priority is to protect Miss Wyzack without severing any family ties. This family tree is sickly, and we must hope that we do not need to prune it. In the late afternoon, we pulled into our client's mother's driveway. Quite a lavish house.
Imagine if she wasn't being blood-drawn by a leech trained in phlebotomy.
Ah, Philip, let us go. We rang the doorbell. There was no answer for quite a while.
Christian, we better hope that Madison's mother is involved.
That is a doubtless fact. However, we may need a different pretense to ease her guard. We rang the doorbell again, and this time I knocked quite heavily on the door. With no response, there was one last method I decided to employ. Miss Wyzack! My name is Christian Oliva, and with me is my companion Philip. We met with your daughter today. There was a slight moment of silence once again, but this time it was quickly interrupted by a clumsy scatter of someone towards the door. Soon it was opened by a tall, exquisitely dressed woman with long blonde hair.
My daughter.
Yes, Madison Wyzack. She came to us with an unpleasant matter. We believe you can help us.
What is it?
It is a matter hardly fit to be discussed at the odds between owner and unwelcome visitors.
Come in.
She fully opened the door, motioning towards her foyer with a single wave of her adorned hand. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You can sit down.
I smiled without responding for a moment. Philip sat on a lavish, unworn couch. Need we be here for a while?
Can it be avoided? Something brought you all the way to me in a hurry? Or is there a different reason you and your friend have dropped by unannounced?
Adept logic, Miss Wyzack. It is Miss, correct?
Yes, unfortunately. I don't exactly enjoy the single life.
My apologies. Nonetheless, you are entirely correct. I sat down beside Philip, my back remaining straight and confirmed. As I said, your daughter needed help with a problem. We do believe your aid would be most helpful.
You're the Christian Hunter Oliva?
Yes,
Since you're here, you already know I'm the one who sent those phone messages.
we do.
Then why don't we cut through these false pretenses and say everything as it is?
My pretenses are as I present them. We need your help.
But aren't I the bad guy?
That is yet to be established, and, I am hoping, to turn out to be an utter falsehood.
You don't know my sister.
We don't know you either. We don't even know your name, other than the fact it starts with the letter N.
I did always love monograms.
She stroked her initials sewn into a throw pillow.
My name is Merribeth.
Well, Miss Merribeth Wyzack, tell us. There is a contract you were forced into by your sister, is there not?
Oh, there sure is. Every cursed 2 weeks another bloody gouge delivered by my dear daughter's guardian. Jacine doesn't even know what guardian means. She wouldn't guard my daughter if her life depended on it.
Does her life depend on it? Philip's attention shot sharply to my question.
I would love to say yes. I would love to say that I would kill her for what she's done, but I can't. If Madison was at risk, she wouldn't live to see me kill her. But really right now, what she's doing is providing for Madison. Yes, she's sucking it out of me like an obese vampire, but she doesn't hoard it to herself. She gives a lot of it to Madison. However, I'm still trying to stop it because...
She stopped and swallowed, but then she didn't continue. We happened to see your daughter in the week prior to her approaching us while she was out with 3 friends. She is quite spoiled. That's what you found hard to say, isn't it?
It is. She has no respect for money. She's pretty much grown up with a wealth of high-class magnitude, but she doesn't know what it means to have that money. She spends it everywhere on everything. And my sister, she doesn't know how to parent. She thinks the rich kid attitude is good. She supports it, and she's probably where Madison got it from. I've tried talking to Jacine so many times. She just uses that bloated, inflated attitude of hers to throw a self-righteous fit like a broken record, and there's nothing I can do about it.
You couldn't use your money to get out of the contract? I mean, surely you could have hired a babysitter. Wait a minute. Why did you have to give Madison to your sister in the first place if you have so much money?
Because I didn't always have all this money. I was a pretty poor kid. My family wasn't poor, but you know what happened to me? I became a knocked up teenager who got held back twice. I graduated high school at 20 years old.
I'm so sorry. How did you manage to make up so much of your life so soon?
Soon, huh? It doesn't feel soon. Anyway, I still had my good grades. I was held back because my first high school closed down. Then my credits didn't transfer. Most people were fine, but I was one of the unfortunate ones who didn't get some message that struck everybody else's notice. I was one of like 10 whole people out of who knows how many that got held back, and I was the only one to get held back twice. Of course, my sister is much older than me, which I suppose I don't mind. Still, she didn't have to face what I went through, but that doesn't stop her from beating me over the head with it. Someday, Jacine, someone is going to show you that you don't get away with everything. Still, even before those 2 stupid repeat years, I managed to get myself a pretty good reputation in a large company. Since I was repeating my classes, I hardly needed to study, so instead I went to work. I always loved computers. I applied for some online company. I worked there for 4 years before I was promoted, but I didn't mind. It was only my second year of college. I didn't expect to be promoted. And then a little while later, I was promoted again. I went from working in technical support to being a supervisor for a whole lot of technical supporters. At the same time, I was working towards my degree in cyber technology. I had a math minor. I took a lot of various courses that I just thought were interesting. Anyway, I graduated 2 years later with honors. Then I had the blessing of meeting the company's owner, Jason Bowman. He developed a significant fondness for me, and I did for him too, and his son, especially. He paid for me to get a master's degree, and so back to school I went. His son and I also got married, and I got pregnant. His son, his name was Sam. He often went on business trips to other countries in the fall. They would last anywhere from a week to a month. The specific trip to Mexico was sadly one of the ones that took more time. Since he didn't want to miss his own child's birth, he decided to go as soon as he could and be back in the fall. So he left June 14th to be back mid-July, except he didn't come back. Something bad happened, really bad. His father got a ransom note in the mail demanding millions of dollars. His father almost lost the business trying to feed those absorbent killers. He couldn't pay for my college anymore, and my salary was docked by tens of thousands. His father tried to find out who did it, but even with all the money he poured into it, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, everyone told him to let it go. His son probably wasn't alive anymore. It was a reality I had to face too. When Madison finally came along, I was working so hard trying to pay for a college I couldn't afford. There was no time for Madison, and I knew it. So I sent her to live with Jacine, the only one I could think of. Bowman went to Mexico himself, looking for his son. He couldn't watch Madison, and he also wasn't sparing any money. Jacine wasn't very fond of the idea, but I bargained with everything I had. Eventually, 3/4 of everything I made convinced her to help me out. I struggled those next 5 years. Eventually, his father came back, the company returned to its standard affluence, my salary increased, my student debt was paid off. I had all of my degrees, I had a job I loved. All was well. All was well until I asked to have custody of my daughter. I waited until I was on my feet again, and that was the biggest mistake of my life. Once she had a taste of those 3/4 of my 6-figure salary, she wouldn't let her teeth out of my neck. I couldn't get Madison away from her. I went almost immediately to take her to court. Unfortunately, I found out she has connections. Between that and 3/4 of 4 of my paychecks, she won in family court. I appealed my case and she won again. And I knew it wasn't legal. It's when I realized I needed to get her out of her courts, but I couldn't. Once I tried to appeal to a different court a third time, they threw me out without a second thought. That happened 4 times. I just couldn't win. I needed Madison to come to me, but Jacine had stopped me from seeing her. She was 10 last I saw her. That was 5 years ago. I was still heavily in debt, but that's when my salary finally started to increase. I figured I would leave her there until I was able to spend more time with her. Well, anyway, you see how that worked out. But there's no one else. If Madison left Jacine, she could only come to me. So I tried desperately to convince her to leave. But the desire that had been building in me for over a decade messed me up. I didn't just call my daughter and say who I was. I tried to drive her away from the person who she knew as Mom all her life. Madison mocked my nice messages, so I turned ugly, and there's nothing else in my life I wish I could undo more. After my last call to her yesterday, I heard her cry before she hung up. My heart broke more than it did when Sam didn't come back from Mexico. I just sat here, and then even cried myself. I didn't know what to do. I called Bowman back, and he said how sorry he felt for me and all that other stuff, but it didn't help. He had no suggestions for me. The highlight of my week is that he found proof that Sam was actually still alive, but that it was absorbing all of his attention. All I knew was that I had to stop. I came back home a self-made villain. and then you two showed up.
We all paused for a moment as we ascertained the severity of her wrenching story.
I'm so sorry, but I'm not sure how sorry I should be.
Philip must have caught the dissonant detail that I did, and if he didn't, then it's something I missed. Either way, she could either save the image of herself with some explanation, or lose even the trust we don't yet hold for her in an array of lies.
What?
I don't know if you just need to provide a little more detail or if you lied, but you told us that you were pregnant in high school. Later, you told us Madison was fathered by Sam Bowman.
I'm sorry. Both of those things are true. I lost the first baby. I don't know why I didn't say that. I suppose I may have subconsciously kept myself from having to go through that again. I didn't mean to make myself sound any more suspect than I already have.
Oh, it's quite all right. I really am sorry for you.
Do you mind if I ask you more about Sam?
Of course not.
How does his father know he's alive?
He's still paying whoever has him, but before he sends any money, he demands that they prove he's alive by sending him a letter with something very specific handwritten on it. Last time, he had them send a letter where Sam solved a calculus problem. It was solved in his handwriting and according to his father, using his own methods.
That is quite unusual. Most kidnappers wouldn't keep him alive in the first place, or be able to reproduce anything so personal. How much is the ransom?
That, I have no idea of it now. At first, the ransom was around 300 million.
Who would demand that much in ransom?
We're sure that it was someone who knew that Jason Bowman would pay anything for his son.
For what did he go down to Mexico?
Business, as I said. What that business was exactly, I'm not sure.
Do you have the contact information of Jason Bowman for me?
Are you really going to try and save him?
All I can do is try. And at the moment, I'm completely lost as to what I should try. For now, I would like to know the exact details of why he went down to Mexico. However, I may not be able to do anything, even with that information. But if I can, in any way, help reunite Sam, with the friendly and loving embrace of his family, then I will not dither in indecisiveness. There is also another disconsolate truth which we incited by utter accidental error.
What could you have done that could possibly be so bad?
Madison knows that you sent those disturbing phone messages. I ask if you would still accompany us to your sister's and daughter's residence tomorrow, despite that fact.
I don't need to tell you how much worse that makes me feel. I'm sure you had the best intentions. You didn't know who I was yet when you told her.
We will see her tonight and tell her of what you told us. I am sure it will turn her sympathy onto your motherly person.
Thank you, but please don't tell her about Sam. She doesn't know who her father is, and I don't want strangers to be the ones to tell her where he's really at.
You really should make it a point to tell her.
I know, I will.
Are there any other secrets you hold in your heart?
In my heart.
They are a degenerate bane when kept there. We all have secrets of the mind. Those are secrets such as the identity of an informant. Then there are secrets of your heart. Those can slowly and subtly kill you if you let them.
Honestly,
Never be honest.
well, I would say no, but to be honest, I'm not sure.
If you think of any, destroy them.
By telling someone, right?
The right people.
Is there anything else?
There is one more thing, Miss Wyzack. When you see your sister tomorrow, as I'm sure you will, you must forgive her.
Forgive that insidious piece of parasitic dross?
Yes. Her actions, as you describe, are deplorable, but a person can always better themselves. And even if your sister does not, you will still be reunited with Madison.
That's if she could even stand me with what I've done.
And even if not, though I am entirely sure that you will, you at least will be able to cease any payment to your sister.
I've tried to get out of it. I can't.
If she does not shred that malicious document to pieces, I will break it and any last hold it has myself. There will be no contract. I will see to that much. But you must forgive your sister.
After all she's done to me, to my family, I lost out on over a decade and a half of my daughter's life.
What she has done cannot be changed, but we will do our best to amend the present. Unforgiveness is a poison. If you drink that cup, It will kill you and leave any possible chance of a life with Madison in disrepair. You can't drink such a poison and expect the other person to die.
I don't want her to die.
That is forgiveness already. The soft sound of an autumn breeze brushed against the windows as Merribeth Wyzack licked her dry lips in a partly agonized and yet also relieved state of contemplation.
Funny. I told you everything, my entire life, and yet you've told me basically nothing.
There is a time and place for everything. Our lives are no secret, but they are not the subject that matters most in our present endeavors. Now your sister and your daughter will become the foreground of our efforts. We must be going. I stood up. Then so did Miss Wyzack.
I told you everything. What if I don't let you go?
Is that a threat?
Maybe.
Even if it's your intention. I must say, it is unsubstantiated. We will be leaving.
Not if I don't let you.
You cannot keep us here by any means or any magnitude of force.
That's another maybe. So I say again, what if I don't let you leave?
Then we'll have to force you to let them leave.
There were two men dressed in full black suits. Some people just throw a tantrum when they don't get their way, don't they?
Dear me, you are serious. I had no idea you came this prepared for the dangers of a psychopathic mother.
Neither did we.
I was never going to keep you here. I was just seeing how much of an impact I could make on you.
Don't push what could blow up in your face. Your life has already been teetering on the edge of nadir for consecutive decades. You do not know us, but know this. Anything you wish to have gained by pushing us could have been obtained through more honorable means. Have a good night, Miss Wyzack. Rest well. It will prove to be obliging tomorrow. I turned and headed for the front door, with Philip close behind me. The two men turned as well, walked out of the door they left open, and waited for Philip and me. One stayed by the door, while the other traversed farther down the concrete path. When we exited her house, the man shut the door behind us. I take it my letter did not make it past the postman, to which I handed it.
We have your letter.
And then you know my response. Goodbye. We must be on our way.
We must insist.
I must make it clear to you that I do not care about the president's high stature in our social class, or his incandescent political power. The fact that he is subject to those privileges only means he is more capable of handling these matters. And if he can't, then he is able to find help. There are those who have no aid and no way of obtaining it. Those are the people I help first. Continued persuasion will not goad me into helping the president, and any coercion will only be returned with my own substantiated and tested threats.
We're insisting on the command of the president. We're not trying to coerce you in any way.
I have been in desperate and hazardous political situations before. I know that's not true.
This isn't like that.
Then if it's not that extreme, I don't need to be involved. Someone else can do it.
That's not what I meant. He's still desperate.
Why?
He has prepared a statement for you.
Tell him to do the right thing. If he doesn't know what that is, then he should pray to God he figures it out.
Mr. Oliva, this behavior is not tolerable.
And what behavior of the president's submit him to his present predicament?
Who said it was a fault of the president's?
I believe he did, in between the lines of his letter. Now I will say one more time that I am busy with more urgent and pressing matters brought on by people with the severe lack of honor that are subjecting innocent people to unjust affliction.
Mr. Oliva, this is the President of the United States. I don't think you understand the severity of this matter.
On the contrary, Mr. Undisclosed, I know exactly what that means. In fact, I've met the past president. I don't know what this matter is, but I already have an urgent affair. Now, if he is truly desperate, then he will bid me in person.
He's unable to.
I said he will. That is the final statement I have for our commander-in-chief. Philip and I turned and walked quickly to my car. Philip, we still have to visit Madison this evening.
I recall. I was surprised you had said that. I didn't think visiting her mother would be a short trip.
Neither did I, but Madison needs assurance and comfort. Right now, she has none.
But what are we going to say when we get over there? Are we going to tell her aunt what you told her mother?
We'll see. I'm not really sure what we should say. Would it be better to tell her now and provide advance warning of tomorrow's events? Or should we wait, giving neither Madison nor Jacene any hint of what's heading their way?
I was wondering what you'd do. You don't know yet?
I have an inclination to let them know that Merribeth will be meeting them tomorrow, only for Madison's sake. Dial this number for me.
You're going to call Bowman now?
Yes.
So, you don't have time for the president, but you have time to try to save a man we don't know in a location we don't know who was abducted by people we don't know?
There's lots of things we don't know. And actually, I feel like we know more about Mrs. Wyzack's husband than we do the president's dilemma. Now you're going to dial the number.
Yeah, it's on Bluetooth.
I sighed as the phone rang. What am I even going to say?
How did you get this number?
Merribeth Wyzack.
How does she have this number? I cut her off.
You cut her off.
Yes, 5 years ago. She called me with an old phone number yesterday. I'm surprised she had the nerve. I told her if she ever tried to reach me again, I would fire her.
You threatened her job.
Yes, and I meant it. I immediately went through the process of officially firing her yesterday.
Is she fired?
She is now. Who are you?
I am Christian Oliva.
I hope you don't expect your name to get you anywhere with me. I know who you are. And frankly, I don't like you.
I don't expect my name to do any more than identify me. And as for your dislike, you can take it and file it away under the Edict tab, because I have a question for you.
Don't talk to me that way. Have respect for your elders.
I do have respect for my elders, and I do apologize for the remark, Mr. Bowman. But it is imperative that you answer me at least one question.
At least one?
I have multiple, but there is one of utmost significance. The others, even though they shouldn't, can wait.
What is your question of so vital importance?
Why did you threaten and then continue to fire Merribeth Wyzack?
I don't like her.
What happened? She does have a six-figure salary paid by your company, does she not?
Of course she does. That's the only thing she has left in her life.
What do you mean by that, Mr. Bowman?
I mean, that. Hold on. What is your relation to this woman?
I will answer this one question, but I need your cooperation, Mr. Bowman.
You have it. You have my word.
I will trust your word.
That's a mistake in this world.
It often is, but unless you are a putrid man, Mr. Bowman, with no regard to saving a life, then I believe that I did not make a mistake.
What life?
I'll answer your first question. Merribeth's daughter, Madison Wyzack, came to my study late this morning. She broke down into tears by the time she finished confiding in my companion and me. I followed my lead, my only lead, and arrived on the doorstep of this woman, which you so greatly scorn. Now, what did you do to reap such a sour harvest?
She sowed sour seeds. I figured out who kidnapped my son. I imagine you knew about the incident. Anyway, we went down to Mexico to cancel a contract with another company. We were paying their company $300 million a year. And guess how much the ransom was? They denied it, of course, but I crushed them nevertheless.
Yet you didn't find your son.
No. So 5 years ago, I went down to Mexico to find him myself. I asked the supposed love of his life, and she told me that she couldn't because she was trying to get her daughter. How could you even contemplate saying no to something like this?
Merribeth's daughter means as much to her as your son does to you.
Well, yeah. I told her she could work for my company because she was the best I ever had. But we would cease to be family. Then I changed all my contact information and cut her off socially.
And if she were to ever contact you again, you would cease her salary.
Exactly.
Why did you request her to go to Mexico with you?
5 years ago, I thought I would find my son. I thought she would like to see her long lost husband, to let him set eyes upon his wife and father as they came to save him.
Why were you so confident that you would find your son simply because you found out who kidnapped him?
Because I know the owner of that company. He had a secret little place in Puebla. I hired my own men. We ripped that place apart ourselves. The U.S. Marshals searched the company's regular address in Mexico City. They found nothing.
And neither did you, presumably.
We didn't find my son, but we found my ransom money
You found your money?
in his possession. We marked it with an ultraviolet ink. When I saw a large case of U.S. currency, I decided to check it. It was our money. The owner claimed he didn't know. He had recently made a business deal and attempts to forge another business. I asked him who, and he told me it was Software de Flores de Tinta, a former rival company of his. So I knew he was lying.
You didn't return home empty-handed.
You got that right. I took my money back and more from that lying heap. He wasn't going to get away with it.
Did you do anything else to him?
I wish I did, and I am glad I didn't ever since. I watched him crumble into dirt, unable to rebuild anything without funds.
That is not justice, you impatient mercenary.
How dare you speak to me that way?
Did you not tell anyone else about what you found? That money could have.
Of course, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't just take what was mine. I took everything he had, and he couldn't say a thing without exposing his hideaway to the icy reach of his debtors.
You disgust me, Bowman. I hope your son is a better man for the Wyzack's sake. You don't know what you're doing, yet you take everything into your own hands. And when people don't go along with you, you do everything you can to crush them.
I will crush you if you don't get control of yourself real soon here, boy.
I don't want to fight with you. Your son has been kidnapped for over a decade. Your grandchild has been used as an expendable pawn. Your daughter-in-law has been gored by a greedy blade, and yet you still do your best to destroy a man's business, ruin his future, call him a liar, and eliminate the support of your best employee. I am doing my best to help all of those people, and I will help them. But if you stand in my way, I will fight you.
You lose.
It doesn't matter if I lose. Even if I knew I'd lose, I would still try. Have a good day, Mr. Bowman. Please try to rest and really think about what would be the best thing to do. Goodbye. Oh, dear me, that is a draining man.
Well, sit back and rest yourself, Christian. You need rest too, and we have over an hour drive left to Madison's house.
Thank you, Phil. I looked over at him and smiled. I knew he had a lot of questions for me after that conversation, yet he restrained himself to allow me rest. We continued on our way with the droning sound from the car engine. Other than that, we drove in silence for a long time.
Here we are. I think it's very fitting that they live on a golf course.
I would have imagined Stonemore Hills or Walking Stick to be a more fitting place of residence for people of such attained affluence.
I might have expected them to leave Pueblo.
Or that. But Philip, it doesn't fit the assumption that she is greedy. We walked up to the front door, rang the bell, and waited.
So what are you going to say?
To the aunt, nothing. Madison, we'll see.
What won't we say?
Not everything we have been told is true. We must be careful as to not feed Madison any more lies.
I'll distract her aunt. I think that's the best thing for me to do.
Splendid. I turned to the door and knocked with my hand, after no one answered the doorbell. There was a shuffle of glassware, and then steps across the hardwood floor. The main door opened, but the screen door remained locked.
Yes?
My name is Christian Oliva, and this is...
Oh, Auntie, these are my new friends. See how elegantly he dresses? I knew you'd like him. And his friend.
Everyone here seems dressed up except you.
Neither are you.
my friend Philip.
So you do fit in.
Oh, stop it. Come on, we can go to my room.
And actually, Jacine, I wondered if I could talk with you.
About what?
I suppose it's likely some trivial tangent to explore, but my mind often enjoys strolling some of those less traveled paths.
Madison and I walked down the hall to her bedroom, while Philip continued to ask about the doorbell.
Oh gosh. He's asking about the doorbell? He's gonna get an earful about my mother.
Why?
She thinks my mom did it.
What do you think?
I know she did it.
You know?
Well, yesterday, my aunt found out that she couldn't access the video feed from the doorbell. Well, she went and checked it, and nothing was wrong with it. The video doesn't save to a cloud or anything, but it doesn't record over itself for a week. So we checked the history. We didn't see my mom. We didn't see anyone or anything specific. It just stopped recording, and she thinks my mom was the only one who knows how to make it do that.
Why would you say that you know?
Well, the last recording we could see was from yesterday, at about 8:30 in the morning. 10 minutes later, my mom came to the door. My aunt wasn't home, but I was.
Your mother was here yesterday.
She was. She rang the doorbell. I didn't answer at first. Then she knocked on the door. I still didn't want to answer it, but she started to call my name. I recognized her voice. It scared me, being alone with her so anxious to see me. I know she must have waited for my aunt to leave. It couldn't be a coincidence so early in the morning.
Other than this morning, when have you last seen your mother?
It's been years.
It's not entirely unlikely for someone to remember a voice that long. But I ask nonetheless, then how did you recognize her voice?
She called me a couple weeks ago. She asked if I would like to go with her. I told her if the courts wouldn't let her take me back, then why should I go with her when I know even less about her than the courts do? I didn't like that. She kept asking me over and over again in different ways. Eventually, I told her that she would have to make it up with my aunt.
What happened yesterday morning?
Well, she was there, waiting for me when I opened the door. She said she would like to spend time with me, wherever I felt like. We could do anything, go anywhere. She would hold back. No. Her word, not mine. I thought she was a little more elegant than to end this sentence with not. Isn't that a preposition or something?
It's an adverb. Your mother used a word that has escaped many modern vocabularies. She used the not spelled N-A-U-G-H-T, not N-O-T. Her not means nothing. How odd does it sound to say, I will hold back nothing?
Well, not really odd at all. But who cares? You must know something by now. What did my mother say when she visited?
Ah, first you must finish your account of yesterday morning's events.
Oh gosh, you talk like her.
I smiled as she continued on her story.
I told her no. I told her exactly what I told her on the phone. She told me that she was made to look bad. She told me she couldn't stand what this was doing to her. What she was doing, too. Oh my gosh. She meant my aunt. I didn't even realize it till now. How could she have the nerve to imply—
Miss Wyzack, stop. You don't know what is happening here. Your mother knows more than you do.
So do you. Now what else is there?
I'm not sure. If I knew all the pertinent facts, I would tell you. But first I must talk with your aunt. We should return to the living room. When we walked down the hall, I noticed Philip and Jacine were not engaged in conversation. There was nothing but a stir of an autumn breeze against the house's exterior, and our footsteps on the hardwood floor to break the stiffened silence.
Ah, young man, this boy of yours.
This boy of mine,
Well, you brought him here, didn't you?
that makes him mine.
Knock it off, smart mouth.
What about this boy of mine?
He said you have lots of questions for me. He asked one before I shut his mouth.
I shut my own mouth. She offered to close it for me, but I thought it would save us the trouble of pressing charges.
Would you shut up about that? I doubt anyone here knows about that more than I do.
I am in agreement with you, Miss Wyzack, but that doesn't mean we are incompetent in the subject.
Well, that's true. Anyway, I figured if you really had these questions for me, then I would let you ask me, since you clearly are the one in charge, or are you not, Mr. Oliva?
I smiled, and remembrance of Venucci swept through my mind. Quite a few different people had called me that before today, but for some reason, the way she said my name brought those memories back to me. One of the last people to call me that was a criminal leader of the underworld in at least 3 continents.
What?
I am not in charge. We work together as one. He has just as much position as I do in our cases. Now, you are not the only person blind to that reality, but you will hopefully trust both of us fully, henceforth.
Sure.
Then you will have no objection to answering this boy of mine.
No, but I would rather Madison leave the room.
Madison, have you eaten dinner?
No, not yet.
Well, I am famished. I have not eaten since we met earlier this morning. Would you do me the honor of accompaniment to dinner this evening?
I wish more boys would ask me that in such a manner. I would love to.
Then let us continue to your choice of establishment. I walked over and opened the door for Madison. Philip, we will bring you back a meal. Miss Wyzack, would you care to request anything?
Not yet. It depends upon what this boy of yours has in store.
Well, we'll keep that in mind. You can reach us, no doubt, if not through your niece, then through this boy of mine, Philip. We shall return. As soon as the door shut, Jacine returned to Philip as though he just asked the question a second ago.
How could you ask such an accusing question?
Because that is where most of today's quandaries have emerged. Now look, I'm not accusing you of anything. It might come out that way because I'm not the best at articulating my sentences, and the only source of information I have to go off of is your sister. But this isn't a trial. This is an investigation to find the truth.
You'd like the truth?
Yes, so why are you keeping Madison from her mother?
Because she isn't paying her portion of Madison's expenses.
What do you mean she's not paying?
I collected 2 payments of $200,000 5 years ago. That's what's been supporting me all this time. And it's almost out. I don't really care about the money. I just don't want her to keep messing up with Madison around. Kids learn from the adults, whether the adults admit or even realize that or not. And Merribeth is not the best role model. She keeps messing up in life. She got knocked up in high school. She was held back twice. She couldn't pay her bills for a couple of years. It's something right after another, after another. That's hard to deal with on your own, but it's even harder trying to carry around a kid the whole time. You're doing it. Now, I have demanded the money because if she can't pay it, I'm not sure she's shown herself to be capable of managing her own life, much less someone else's.
Have you told her this? Miss Wyzack, did you tell this to your sister?
Not exactly,
What? Why not?
because then she would pay. Now, before you tell me I don't make any sense, let me explain. If I told her I would only give her her daughter if she paid the money, she would pay it without batting an eye. She's good at doing what people tell her to get her way, but that's not why I'm holding on to Madison. I'm looking for Merribeth to get a firm control over her life. It's fallen apart so many times. I'm surprised that she's recovered as well as she did. I'm waiting for her to do the right thing because it is the right thing, not because it's what I told her she'd have to do.
Thank you for trusting me. You are helping yourself more than you know.
I don't want to help myself. I'd like to help Madison and Merribeth.
Don't abandon yourself. If you didn't take care of yourself, you wouldn't be here. And if you weren't here, who would take care of Madison?
I imagine your answer to that question 5 minutes ago would have been her mother.
I think that is still my answer. Now, I'm not certain, but I think that both of you are honest somehow.
What do you mean?
I mean that somehow you both are the victims.
How could that be possible?
I think we'll have to ask Christian.
Dairy Queen. I know I said to choose something nearby, but I thought you might have chosen a restaurant.
This is a restaurant, at least for me. I don't know how often you come here, but it's not a coincidence to see me here.
We placed our order and sat down at a table. I kept waiting for Madison to push once again for more information about her dilemma, and when we were sitting down with our food was the time she chose.
Okay, we're alone now. So tell me what you haven't revealed to me yet.
Young Wyzack, rest. Your problems will be resolved soon enough. For now, let them drain out of your mind and rest.
Rest? Don't think about it? Forget it? Is that the best you can do?
Oh, that's not my best ever, but in this situation, it is what I think is best. Don't worry, tomorrow we will tell you everything. But I have yet to know what your aunt had to unearth, and as for what I have already discovered, I don't quite know what to make of it. I don't want to grant you false information. Besides, Philip and your aunt are on their way. They just text me. So take a few minutes and rest.
What does it look like to you so far then?
Not good, Madison. Not good. But do not weigh yourself down with it. Pick a new topic.
I don't know what else to talk about.
I smiled and watched this young girl engrossed in conversation with me without even looking in my general direction. She raised a French fry to her red-coated yet naturally pink lips. How's your food?
It's good.
She looked at me. The worry in her broke through even the exorbitant coating of applied makeup. How are you?
Dying to know what you haven't said.
Don't let that kill you. There's much too good in your life.
In my life? There's good in my life?
Yes, you have a caring mother, an absence of financial problems, and a promising future.
My mother is caring?
That much I will say.
So she's not bad.
I will only say that she is caring.
Fine.
I said you have a promising future. What kind of future would you like it to be?
Me? Oh, I don't know. I would like a family. Other than that, I don't really know. I suppose a family is about the only dream I have for myself.
Me too, mainly.
You? Looked you up. All the things you can do, and your big dream is to have a family?
Yes.
Why?
I do all these things you read about, trying to do the right thing. People think it's hard to make a difference in the world. They get tired and weary when they don't see results from something for which they've sacrificed. But it's not about doing good for the result. You do the right thing because it's good, not because it's easier for what you get out of it. And sometimes it definitely isn't easy. It's not always some harrowing ordeal, but that doesn't mean it's easy.
Why is a family something you would like to have?
Many of the things I do them because I can. I risk my life to save others. I counsel people to the farthest extent of my skill, because I would like them to be happy. There's chaos everywhere, and a lot of times we accept and even create it. However, I try to help others in that chaos. For myself, in my dream, I live peacefully with my loving family. There's no proverbial cases to solve, no justice to serve, just peace, love, and joy to live in forever. Part of the reason I try so hard, and why I do everything I do, is because I know how much that dream means to me, so I help others to attain it as much as I can. People would say, wouldn't you get bored? What would pass the time? But I don't need this to keep me from being bored. I play the piano, I read, I garden. This is all part of, I suppose, my career. But it's not what I would do if I didn't feel like I needed to do it. She didn't respond or say anything. She just sat there, looking at me with complete attention.
Christian! There you are.
They're keeping your food heated, Philip. We'll collect it and be on our way.
Okay, but first, there's something JC needs to tell you.
I will let you tell me. For now, we must return home.
It's really important.
I would expect it to be no less. Miss Wyzack, it was a pleasure. Thank you for your generous company. We returned home immediately, leaving Madison and her aunt together. Philip told me of all that Jacine had told him, disclosing yet another perspective in this case that almost completely contradicted every other. So Jacine has not collected any money from Merribeth whatsoever. We descended the staircase into my study.
Not a cent. I wouldn't have believed her, but she had proof on hand. Her records are quite extensive and well kept.
She's an attorney.
Well, she said that Marybeth is supposed to deposit the due portion of her salary into an account on the 15th of each month. But each time Jacine tries to withdraw anything, there's no money in the account. She continued to tell me that everything she pays for, she does with her own money. She uses her credit card for everything. She showed me her bank statements. Everything is paid from her credit card, and her credit card is paid from Jacine's own accounts. And every deposit made into her accounts came directly from her firm.
I imagine that she proved the money came from her clients or other legal sources.
She proved it 7 times before I stopped requesting information.
She proved decidedly trusting Philip.
She's decidedly trusting in your reputation. That and the fact I only looked at her papers. I didn't take pictures or copies or anything.
It is exceptionally fortunate that she was open. If not, she would appear culpable. Now, we know she's telling the truth.
So, what now?
I don't know. Merribeth said this leechy sister exploited her financial situation, but obviously Jacine has received nothing. Merribeth said how amazing Bowman was. Bowman obviously hates even the sound of a name.
Oh, that's another thing. Jacine knows Bowman.
They're related by marriage.
Yes, but she said they became good friends. Well, the way she explained it, they were only acquaintances until about 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Then they had met again right before he went to Mexico. Marybeth, Jacine, and Bowman all met. That account of their stories is at least consistent.
Yes, it is.
What do we make of it?
I don't know, Philip. We sat in silence for quite a long time. Incense burned, graphite ground against paper. My brain beat like a drum, striking note after significant note, but unable to play a song. The only way that Bowman and Jacine could be telling the truth was if Marybeth was lying, but I highly doubted that possibility. There was one way that we could test the probability of that alternative. Philip, call Marybeth. Tell her to meet us here before we go to see Madison tomorrow.
Okay,
And tell her to bring proof of her payments to his sister. Meanwhile, there was one interest in which I was still completely lost, but often wondered. After a few phone calls to the Colorado Attorney General's office, the U.S. Department of State, the U.S. Marshal's Office, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I finally tracked down someone with relevant information regarding Sam Bowman at the FBI.
Yeah, I remember Sam Bowman. That was quite a few years ago now. What's your interest in it?
I have been helping his wife and daughter in a matter. I learned about Sam strictly through their family. I was just seeing what happened with Sam Bowman.
You don't have something more specific to ask? From what I've heard, I thought you would have something a little bit more, I don't know, direct.
I usually do, but in this case, I don't really know what I would do. I'm just trying to see if there's anything I can do.
Well, the whole thing seemed to be centered around these three companies. There was Jason Bowman's company, who was the most successful at the time. Then there was Software de Flores de Tintas, and then there was Programación de Bits y Bytes. Those three companies were running neck and neck against one another actually for decades. After the whole situation with Sam blew up, only Software de Flores de Tintas remains.
Why was Bowman's company competing with two Mexican computer companies?
Well, because Bowman's company is itself actually Procesamiento de Caché.
I suppose I should rephrase my question. I know his company is based primarily in Mexico, but why is that?
Bowman didn't start his company. A man named Mateo Acosta started it, and in the first 2 years, Bowman bought large shares of stock. Mateo was quite a bit older than Bowman, so when he died, Bowman took over.
Now, what happened 5 years ago?
Well, the whole thing started more than 5 years ago.
I know.
I knew you had some direct information that you were seeking.
I'm getting there.
Well, anyway, 5 years ago is when it blew up for Bowman. That's when the chase was over. Bowman convinced us that he knew where his son was located. He listed details, places where he sent the ransom, explained a motive they would have had, one that we actually had come up with ourselves, by the way, and even showed us two bills that he marked with ultraviolet ink, the same bills used to pay the initial ransom demand. It occurred to me that he just replaced two of the ransom bills with regular ones before he sent the ransom, but it just didn't seem likely at the time. He'd just been to Mexico for over a week, and even if he hadn't, he would have had to wait a decade before revealing that information. Now, even the smartest and most articulate of criminals, or any of us for that matter, hardly ever think that far ahead, nor have the patience to wait that long. Anyway, we went ahead, off to Mexico. Boy, I say that like it was a pleasure trip. Oh, and Bowman claimed he obtained that bill from Proclamacion de Bitsy Bytes, so they were the seemingly guilty ones. Software de Flores de Tinta also seemed pretty guilty to us, but once Bowman believed it was the other company, he convinced us of that too. So we entered Mexican soil, surrounded their office building, but we didn't find any of Bowman's marked ransom money. We didn't find his son, Sam. We didn't find any incriminating indication of anything. It was just a standard Mexican office building. Well, the company's board of directors went to the government, and as of 2019, any U.S. government agency or military group can no longer trespass on the Mexican territory on the grounds of Sam Bowman's kidnapping. So even if we did find them, we technically couldn't do a thing about it until we were once again allowed to set foot across the border. I didn't want to say that first off when you called because I didn't want to crush your hopes or anything, but Bowman's son is sort of pretty much stuck wherever he's going to be for a long time.
I have not the slightest idea as to the political or martial dealings of an international kidnapping. It could hardly be up to me to save him, as of yet. And the crushing of my hopes is far from the most tragic shatterings in this case. There is a mother, and soon to no daughter, who already drowned once under the weight of forlorn circumstances. But I raised them back again, without a way to save them from drowning once more.
Look, kid, I'm sorry. I know how it feels when the other person gets hurt just because of you. I've been in the FBI for most of my life now. I've been dealing with these kidnappings for many years. There's been many times where we've made the decision to go in at the abductee's expense. I've even been the one who gets a hostage killed. It's not easy. You have to do the best you can. And I don't just mean that I got the hostage hurt either. Of course I did, but I worked with the families for weeks or longer. Then I have to go back and watch their hearts break. People do die. You get hurt. You're the one who made the call, but you can't give up. You have to try, because if you don't try, you may as well pull the trigger yourself.
Thank you. Your words are a soothing comfort to a spirit that has been strong for so long, starting to get stiff. I often have to be the one who picks others up. I hope you know how much you've helped me by lifting me up.
I have to say, some of it I got from you, kid. You're the one who doesn't give up.
I smile. If I did, I may as well pull this trigger myself. I couldn't do that.
Well, I'm glad I helped, and I also hope I helped you out with Sam as well.
I do have one more question. What was the motive for Software de Flores de Tinta?
Well, the same as the other company, Programacion de Bits y Bytes had a bigger motive. In either case, they were fighting for the success of the company. Bowman was slightly ahead of the other two, so he would be the bigger target. It worked, too, of course. He nearly flew that company into the ground to meet the ransom demands. There's not many people who would pay more than the kidnappers demanded.
There's not many kidnappers who would keep their victims alive for 15 years.
Yeah, isn't that true? Anyway, the motive for Programmazione dei Bits and Bytes had to have been higher, though, because even though that company was competing with Bowman's and that other company, Software de Flores de Tintos, their finances were almost all supported by Bowman. As far as we could tell, it just kind of happened over time. Bowman must have figured that out, and when he sent his son down there to cancel pretty much any business dealings the companies had with one another, it would have meant the end for Programmazione dei Bitsy Bytes. In the end, they still went down because Bowman could hardly keep himself afloat, much less anybody else. And despite returning to an extensive and triumphant company, it's not nearly what it once was. With the other two gone, Software de Flores de Tintos monopolized that sector, and by no means would they have let Bowman back in.
It worked out glowingly for them, didn't it?
It sure did, but we couldn't find any real evidence against anyone. His son just vanished. It was hard to just let it go, but we had no choice when Mexico basically banned the investigation.
Don't give up hope. The supply we have is scarce enough.
Well, do you have an idea?
Not an indicio.
I put the phone down on my desk. My head was lowered towards the carpet. My eyes gently closed. I tightened and squinched my eyes as hard as I could before reopening them and lifting my head. Philip was smiling at me from across my desk.
That means inkling, doesn't it?
Indicio? Yes.
I don't just know German, you know.
Ah, well, Spanish is a valuable language in Pueblo.
And in Mexico.
Philip handed me a cup of tea. I smiled and took a sip and set the cup back down on the desk. We sat there for the next half hour, the tea and my phone left untouched, sitting beside an incense that I lit that had nearly finished burning, while I continued on my math. Since the gradient is the vector that points in the area of a function's steepest descent, at a minimum or maximum of a multidimensional function, it must be zero. I mean, if the gradient is zero, then there's no farther ascent, and the only way to go is down. Hence, it is a maximum. If the negative gradient is zero, then there is no farther descent, and the point is a minimum. That's only logically, not mathematically, basically. Was it Fermat who employed that logic? I think so. Anyway, the analog here is critical points, which are where the derivative is zero. In this case, the gradient is zero. For the gradient to be zero, each of the partials must be zero. The partial of f with respect to x and the partial of f with respect to y. To determine whether it is a maximum or minimum, and since it is a function of two variables, we take the second partials of the point and plug those into values into a 2x2 determinant. Doing the math, I found my point was a maximum. I was writing on the whiteboard when Philip once again returned his attention to my activities.
Are you doing math right now?
Homework, really. I'm using the gradient of various functions to find the maximums and minimums of three-dimensional shapes.
You needed a break from the Wyzack affair.
I can do no more right now. I am fatigued with their affairs, whether in Mexico or in Pueblo. I am stuck. I don't know what to make of what we have gathered. There's no more good that I can do tonight. At most, I can exhaust what little drive and common sense that I have left, and impede any progress we may make tomorrow.
Are we going to make any progress tomorrow?
With regards to Madison, we will resolve the matter. With regards to Sam, it is not likely. Either way, I have homework that will not solve itself, so I will tend to it. And it's quite calming, actually. There is a definite and set solution. Even if there is no solution, there's a way to find that it does not exist. You can check your math, run the calculations again, solve them with other methods, and ensure that you get the correct answer. With math, it is not often ambiguous. And at my own amateur level of the subject, it is entirely apparent.
Speaking of that apparent math, I'm stuck on my own homework. I'm trying to derive the exact error of the left Riemann sum rule, and I can't get my numbers to work.
They gave something that challenging to your class as homework?
Well, it's extra credit, The teacher's extra credit is insane.
What teacher is it?
It's Dr. Kendallson.
Ah.
A smile flashed across my face.
Philip stared at my math on the board in front of him. Then suddenly he snapped back to the current conversation.
So, what can I do?
You remember Taylor series, surely?
Yes, of course.
Try using them.
I know I'm supposed to use them, and that the last term is the error, but when do I stop the series?
For it to be exact, you would have to tailor the series to the sum you are computing.
Uh-huh, and?
You would have n terms, n being however many you choose. What happens when you add up a bunch of terms and then divide by the number of terms you added up?
It's an average.
What is an average?
I don't know what response would help me here.
In the most general case, what must be true about an average of even just two numbers? The average is what?
It's in between the two numbers you added.
Yes, an average value is in between the smallest and largest value. And what do you have written on your paper there?
F prime of c over...
Good, good. The derivative of your function, f. What does the intermediate value property state?
If the function is a continuous on a definite interval from a to b, then it takes on all the intermediate values, like if L is between f of a and f of b, then it must equal f of c, and c is... Oh!
Do you see it, Philip? A function with the intermediate value property is one where it must take on all intermediate values. The sum of all those derivative terms divided by the number of terms you added is like an average. It really is a value in between the biggest and smallest value. It's an intermediate value of the derivative. And an intermediate value is in fact a value of the derivative function itself. So you can replace all of that series that can go on infinitely with one value of the derivative, c. In your case, you have a few other variables left over. If you take the difference of a and b and divide by n, what do you say it equals?
I have that b minus a over n is h.
Then what is n times h?
It's b minus a.
Exactly! Look at what you have left. His face lit up as he wrote down a formula for the exact error of the left Riemann sum of any function on any interval. The 19th of September, 2023. The next day I took an early morning walk around the block in the brisk morning air. I had barely turned a corner when I felt a hard object pushing into my back, and a voice say,
Move.
We walked to a nearby car parked a little way off the trail. The door opened as we approached and closed behind me before I was even fully sitting down. The man entered the passenger seat, and the nearly silent car peeled out of its hiding spot. Mr. President, I am not amused.
Mr. Oliver, please allow me one statement.
Please.
I'm not in front of a million cameras. I can be sincere.
What is your statement?
If you allow me to explain my dilemma first, and then decide to refute me, I will leave without further provocation.
This is exactly what I asked of you. How could I possibly refute you, Mr. President?
Oh, thank you, God. You are my last resort. You see, I'm the second president in all of United States history who has never married. I have met somebody. There just hasn't been really an opportune moment in my life for starting a family and settling down. Consequently, my sister is the first lady. I had to say that first. The problem is that I do have a favorite female companion in my life. My career has always been rigorous, and I haven't always made her my first priority, and it has not happened without paining her. I'm always empathetic. I know exactly how it feels all too well, but now that my career has a roaring kick to its vigor, it's been getting worse and worse. Essentially, she's been threatening to get even with me, and believe me, she can, if I don't do something soon. That's my problem in a fleeting summary.
Let me hear the unrestricted version.
You see right through me, don't you?
I tend to see right through anyone when they lie. It makes no sense that someone who waits so long for the right moment to start a family and settle down would choose a person so vicious as to destroy the one they love.
Do you know how long I've played this out in my head? It was all I could think about the entire flight over from Washington. I thought I had it perfectly scripted.
Events often transpire quite differently in all actuality than in our minds, and scripts only guide. They are not word for word of the actual conversation.
I'll remember that.
So what actually happened?
You kind of saw me having dinner with a friend from high school and got the wrong impression. My friend's birthday also happened to be in April, the month we met, so I bought a necklace of her birthstones. That just about did me in when she got the bill for it.
You charged it to her.
I used the wrong credit card. I thought I lost her credit card, so I just used the one I had on me without looking at it. After a very long and heated phone conversation, I realized I had both cards all along.
Why do you have a joint account?
We got it a number of years ago before I became president. I just never threw the card away because the account was still open.
This transpired in April. What happened more recently?
I have, well, what could be used as blackmail against me. She's not asking for anything more than for the truth and some time together. But at this point in my career, I just don't have enough time for everything. I don't even have enough time for all the vital aspects of my career, much less anything else. She has all the time in the world. Her family owns a very large publishing company. That company published my book without charge and made a series of significant loans to my campaign. They didn't really expect to be paid back because I thought I was going to work because they thought I was going to work on tax laws and interest rate reforms from which their company would benefit. But I never did. They haven't forced me to pay anything back, but they could. She could. If they do, I have no way to pay it. I used every cent I have running for president, and every penny I've made has gone to paying my own loans and debts.
Except for the pretty pennies going towards diamond necklaces. Mr. President, I need you to trust me. Quit suppressing the truth or I will walk away. Tell me everything, as much as you possibly can, so I can help you. Even if what you just said is true, that still did not answer my question. Now, this isn't a political debate. I will force you to answer my questions.
Sorry, I just really need your help, and don't want you to abandon me even though it's all my fault. Every last botch I can fathom is rooted in my error. I've seen what you do to people who do it to themselves. You let them face what they've brought on themselves.
I don't abandon anyone. Every last person who I have ever let face their own repercussions alone are those who walked away from me. I told them exactly what I told you. I will help you if you trust me and do what I say. They would rather face the repercussions than the truth, and so they did. Many people do trust me, and it is those people who I help. The people who care enough to do the right thing and to try and make up for the wrong they've done. The ones who keep trying to do that, even when it gets hard and their sorrow and regret falls upon unforgiving hearts. They're the ones who I will help.
It's been a long week.
It's been a longer 2 days.
What do you mean?
I have completely ceased every last one of my efforts to reunite a young girl's family which has been torn apart by greed, deceit, and hatred, just so I can talk with you. Now, I am extremely pressed for time and energy. I would like to help you. I've helped the government before. Now, believe me, any corruption I found has been viciously obliterated by justice. But I do not think that should weigh heavy on your conscience. You're the first president in a long time that a majority of the people like. We have gone a long time without trust and without faith in our government, and you have been able to restore some of that. So let me help you, Mr. President, who has already helped me, the nation, and the world more than you know.
I'm not supposed to be here, you know. I was not permitted to take such an unnecessary trip, but I made it anyway. I only left yesterday and I'm returning tonight. I'll be back before they know I left. I suppose I forgot why I took such a large chance to see you. That, right there. What you just said to me, that's why I came to see you.
Then let us finish what you started.
I've already taken from her family's company without repaying a cent of service, abandoned her to the point where she feels like I was leading her on, and given her ample reason to believe that I have not been faithful, all by unfortunate circumstance. One of the biggest things been asking me is to do something about the abortion laws. It either seems too open and free in some states or on full lockdown in others, where they become nearly impossible to obtain. I've been meaning to get to those laws, just like so many things, but I haven't been able to. Everything else has been drowning me to where I can't work on things that I promised to the people who put me here. Anyway, her sister has been subject to some very deplorable and violent sufferings by a very vulgar and wicked person. She got pregnant by no fault of her own. She's only 34. She also lives in Texas, where she was unable to get an abortion. She tried to leave, but she was in the spotlight because of my position as president. She and her family didn't want to hurt my career by trying to flee and get around a law that has been supported by the Supreme Court. It could have turned into an unnecessary scandal where I would have been funded by the people who avert the law when it's convenient and plan to use my political levy to pass laws benefiting themselves.
Would it really have turned into such a scandal?
I don't know. But a few days ago, her sister was ready to give birth to twins from that incident. She gave birth to the first one and then died from unforeseen complications. She should have had a C section, but we didn't find out until it was too late. And I was the one who kept asking her to stay in Texas. I was supposed to work on passing laws that would allow her to have it done safely and legally. I didn't do that. I didn't do what I said I would. Will you help me?
Of course I will. What do you request of me?
I was the person she trusted just as much as her own family, and now someone's died because of it. She's been lenient, making excuses for me up to this point, but this was inexcusable, even for her. I need you to talk to her. She trusts you. She believes in you. You can convince her that I'm not leading her on, that I'm faithful, that I was forced to break my promises because much worse things would have happened if I didn't.
What have you done so far on your own?
Everything I'm asking you, everything I could think of. She doesn't want to listen to me.
How many times?
Once. Then she threatened to demand those 3-year-old loans be paid if I tried contacting her again.
These wounds are fresh and burning with heat and agony. She lost blood because she chose water. She's realizing that now. A few moments ago, you told me how you had forgotten why you risked so much to see me. I believe she has forgotten why she chose water over blood. There is water you choose to make into blood eventually. You forgot your trust in me in a matter of hours. Imagine having 3 years to forget about trust and having circumstance after circumstance disprove that trust again and again.
What are you saying? That I just need to wait for her to remember?
You need to remind her.
I've tried. I need you to remind her.
I have prior obligations that are just as desperate as yours, and I can't ignite a spark she feels for you. There's a reason that she stayed with you all these rapid and lonely years. There's a reason you chose her. There's also a reason that most people like you as president. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Despite her threat, I believe it is best for you to go to her yourself. So go to her. Get her alone just as you have me, though perhaps without forcing her to a gunpoint. Pour out your heart to her, hold nothing back, and plead with her for her forgiveness. It will require that you be entirely vulnerable in her complete power. If she really was a person good enough to be chosen by you, then she is more than good enough. Believe without seeing.
If I do this and she turns me away, I will have nothing left.
If you don't do this, the rest of your life will have left.
I don't believe this. All the people.
Trust me. If I fix this for you, the bond between you both will break again. It needs to be patched by you both together.
I think I just need to suck it up and do it. I feel like I need to see it to believe it.
Believe it has happened already. If you try to suck it up, it will leak out in your apology and poison your explanation. It will shred the torn bonds you have yet to fix. You don't have the option of abandoning Faye.
I'll do my best. But I don't have the option of talking to her until it's too late. Seeing you is impossible enough. I won't be able to make it to another state, much less spend enough time there to tend to the disaster that's resulted. It'll just be trading in one hopeless fight for another.
If your political adversaries catch you, they can only face you politically. And you are the President of the United States, more powerful than any of them. But she can stop you by turning the people against you and stripping away any last shred of authority, trust, and influence you have left. You have hope in this woman who trusted you. Why don't you try to trust her once again?
I don't know if I. It'd be so easy for me to fly back straight back to DC. I wouldn't have to face her, my political opponents, but that would be the end of me. It would end my career and my subsequent life that I've worked so hard for.
This may not be the only way, Mr. President, but it's the best that I can come up with.
You just ended a sentence with a preposition. Does that mean something?
Believe in her and believe in yourself. Then I exited his vehicle while it was stopped at a red light, entered Philip's vehicle, stopped directly in the next lane, and closed my eyes just in time to see the light turn green and the car engines roar to life once again.
Mr. President, should we?
No. There's a reason I said not to do anything if that car followed us. He's helped me already.
He didn't do a thing.
I think he did, more than we know.
Thank you, Philip.
Perfect timing, huh?
Well, thank you.
My eyes instantly opened, and my head shot up from its reclined position to see Merribeth sitting in the driver's seat.
I've been looking over her financial information while she's been driving.
I briefly turned my head in acknowledgement of my companion's statement, but kept my focus on the adept young woman. Hello, Mrs. Bowman.
Oh my gosh. I haven't been called that in so long. Since Sam was here, really.
We turned back towards Pueblo West, leaving us about 20 more minutes until we arrived at the home of Jacine and Madison Wyzack.
I don't know what to make of any of this. She's been paying money to this account, and it keeps getting withdrawn by an account that Jacine showed me yesterday. But I looked at the account of Jacine's, there's no money in it, and I don't know where it's going.
This is a tangled affair of lies and revenge, but those evils are running out of deceptions. Throwing sand in someone's eyes only works when they're not expecting it. When they rub it out and get back up, you actually have to fight. And those evils will have no power once they are exposed.
What about my daughter?
The damage has been done, but it will mend, if with nothing else then with time. But we will see if we can accelerate the rehabilitation of this ravished family. We walked up to the sidewalk, Philip and I in front. Before I even knocked, Jacine opened the door, her gaze fixed on her sister. Jacine,
Mr. Oliva, boy of his, sister of mine.
Jacine,
Merribeth, let us go inside first.
This isn't your house, boy.
I frankly do not care. That response was entirely unprovoked. Or did you really plan on having this family reunion take place on the front stoop?
Articulate, Madison said. She wasn't kidding. Come in.
Mom?
Baby, you're so big.
Now, we will end this custody dispute today. By no means, Jacine, do we mean to take away your niece. This is to destroy any possible blame in this poorly handled affair.
So what do you think happened?
A lack of trust and communication maimed this family.
Would you quit blaming it on...
Face your faults! So that we may proceed to the sinful intent.
Sinful?
Yes.
And he doesn't just mean your mother's muddled assortment of lies.
I told you both.
The what, Merribeth? The truth? How can that be when we asked you for everything you knew repeatedly? Or did you really forget to mention that you came in person to see your daughter? Did you really forget of Bowman's threat? It is hard enough to help you people out of the hole you dug without you continuing to make it deeper. Do you realize how lethal a white lie can be? Do you understand that I put Philip and myself on the line for you? We do our best to help you. So could you all just do your best to help us?
I'm sorry, I just...
You always did.
Quiet!
I needed your help. I had been deprived of my daughter for 15 years. I just couldn't keep losing more and more of her. I didn't tell you I went to see my daughter because she rejected me.
Madison frowned and lowered her head.
How could I ask you to help me get back someone who doesn't want me?
You already did. And here we are, knowing all that you tried to hide, and helping you nonetheless. Merribeth smiled, and Madison raised her head to look at me.
Helping her?
We're helping all of you. Perhaps this will help. I referenced this earlier, but it may have been easily overlooked. Merribeth believed that you were bleeding her dry, using her daughter as a means to do so.
That's absurd.
Maybe so, but she believed that. She believed you would hold on to her daughter for as long as she kept paying you. So what did she do?
She sure didn't pay me.
The reference was to a threat made by Mr. Bowman, her employer. He was sickened with the very thought of Merribeth's place in his past, so he made a deal with her. If she were to never contact him again, he would continue to employ her with an occupation she relished, and a salary that is bountiful. Merribeth, would you like to tell us what you did?
It sounds like you already know what I did and why. After Madison told me to go away, I walked back to my car. Because of that contract we signed, I thought the only way to get you to release my daughter was to cut my salary until it was no longer meaningful to you. So I called Bowman without even knowing what to say. I just told him what I did and how I was rejected.
What? You got yourself fired?
He'll get one more payment from me.
Because of that contract? I would have never held you to that.
Then why didn't you let me take custody of my daughter?
Because you never paid me a dime, despite how inflated you kept saying your income became. If you were willing to lose a six-figure salary, why did you bother deleting our doorbell feed?
What? I never did that.
You mean you didn't mess with our video system when you came to see me?
Of course not, honey. By the time I saw it was there, I knew I must have already been recorded, and by then it was too late.
Whoever is behind it must have known that the only reason you two couldn't get along was because you two weren't talking, and therefore each only knew half the story. It was essential to keep you two at odds, or you would eventually talk and figure out you weren't actually enemies.
Oh dear me.
What?
Who was the one other person that knew Merribeth was recorded? The 22nd of September, 2023.
Letter of rejection?
He read from an envelope in his hand. He opened it and read through its contents. A recent business deal had just been terminated due to a failed transaction.
That's impossible. That account can't be empty.
He riffled through a stack of envelopes until he found the one enclosing that company account's bank statement and opened it. He froze when he saw the account balance. A zero sum. The entirety of the account had been withdrawn a day before the transaction. Then he looked at the name, Sam Bowman. The door opened, and he turned around, shocked. You really should lock your door, Mr. Bowman.
Get out.
I see you're reading your mail. In case you're wondering how your kidnapped son withdrew $500,000, he didn't.
I did. I know I was fired, but Sam's name is still on the company account, and I have every last one of his legal documents.
In case you're wondering why we're here, the FBI is waiting for you. I turned and let my hand lead the way to the open door. Mr. Bowman slowly stood up from his chair, the bank statement falling from a limp hand, and started for the door with a gait leaden and disheartened with exposure. The 23rd of September, 2023. Returning to my study, Philip Madison and I just walked inside. I, after depositing a few traveling adornments, proceeded immediately to my whiteboard, still covered with gradient homework. Merribeth and Jacine were meeting over coffee at a local cafe to sort out their tangled past. I was quite sure that it would be fine without our presence. Madison requested to come along with us, so we excitedly accepted her offer, especially since this first preliminary meeting between the two sisters was likely to be extensive.
Thank you again for settling everything.
It is our pleasure.
So how did you figure it out anyway?
Well, when we knew that Bowman had to be the one who hacked your aunt's security system, we knew he had to have a motive. Helping your mother was obviously not a reason to delete the footage because she could have done that on her own. Well, talking with your mother and your aunt, we knew he helped them set up the contract they entered into as well as the payment method for that contract.
I knew Philip wasn't divulging the entire story for Merribeth's sake. The reason Bowman was able to withdraw funds without either sister's notice is because he did it in his son's name. Because they were married, every account in Sam's name was also in Merribeth's name. The J scene, it looked like Merribeth withdrew funds immediately after depositing them. As for Merribeth, she never followed the money trail. The hate between the two had extinguished every last ember of trust for the past 15 years.
The FBI found the majority of harsher crimes once we started them on the right trail. Your mother kept losing in court against your aunt, and that bothered Christian. Please realize that this is not meant as an insult to you or your aunt, but he was not confident in your aunt's legal competency. She often loses cases. She wins some too, but to win again and again in court against your mother when she had improved her life so much was overly coincidental. The Bureau found over 4 judges, and 9 other people involved in those trials had communication and financial transactions between aliases and dummy and umbrella companies that all led back to Bowman. They also charged him with a bunch of crimes related to the black market.
What?
Yeah, he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars hiring mercenaries, arming them, transporting them, and leading them, actually. Then he suppressed information from the authorities when he used those mercenaries, which banned the United States military from entering Mexico. It wasn't a complete ban, but they couldn't pursue a certain kidnapping case after that. All of this, of course, is just the charges pending against him. We'll see what happens rather a long time later after one drawn out court case. Christian also pointed something out to me that I thought was an interesting perspective.
On what?
He said Bowman wasn't really that bad of a person. Before those events ripped his life apart 15 years ago, he hadn't done anything nearly so dishonorable. But then he lost his son, almost lost his company, and everyone he turned to and confided in rejected him. No one helped him find his son. He thought everyone was against him and turned against the world. What probably happened was that he kept using all of his own finances to try and do what he could for his son. Then there was nothing left for him. So he exploited the one source he had available, the account he set up for the Wyzacks. Otherwise, there was no point in stealing from them. You weren't there, but his house was not as grand and elaborate as that of most millionaires. It was by no means a low-income home, but it was as though he was living on, well, a six-figure salary.
That's tragic.
There was a pause, with only the striking of my marker against the whiteboard breaking the silence.
You don't tend to say much unless you have to, do you?
I immediately turned to face both of them at her statement. There are times I do. This is a time I don't. Then I turned back around to my math.
Oh my gosh. Is that foreign?
Only to normal people. We're not that normal.
Well, I could tell that by looking at you.
Philip, who often wore t-shirts, shorts, and a baseball cap, fell silent.
But normal people couldn't help me. Normal people got me into this mess.
You'll love Brittany. She liked us for our eccentricities at first, too. Now she's full of all of her own little unique mannerisms.
You've ruined her?
I wouldn't say ruined her.
Well, how can I meet her?
She's visiting universities with our housekeeper and her husband. She'll be back on Saturday.
What's her relation to the housekeeper?
Brittany lives here too.
How old is she?
She's 18 like us.
A teenage girl lives here? With you two? And she's not related?
Correct.
She chose to live here by her own free will?
Also correct. It was a rather hard time in her life.
Has it really been that long, Philip? Since the three of us were together on the news?
3 years. We were 15 then.
Is she normal?
She was the most popular girl in middle school and still is in high school to this day.
Well, I have to meet her now. Is it okay if I come back over next Saturday?
We'll call you when she returns.
There was a slight pause before he turned his attention to me.
You sent a letter?
I turned around to see the candle I routinely used to form my wax seals still lying on the desk in front of me. I am rather used to Mrs. Hill, and I did send a letter. Oh, Mrs. Hill is our housekeeper.
To who?
I felt there was still yet something more I could do for our commander-in-chief.
So you sent a letter to...
I capped my expo marker and laid it on the small surface on the front of the whiteboard. I sat down in my chair and motioned to 2 other chairs with my arm. Sit down, Madison. Philip's name was implied, and he sat down next to her. I think you'll find this fascinating. Suddenly, a thought slammed into the forefront of my mind like an obvious juggernaut that had evaded even my best reasoning until that very moment.
Christian, what happened?
Is the thought obvious?
Well, your expression only changed slightly, but I know you well enough to be certain that it was not caused by normal circumstances, not when you're about to tell us something fascinating.
As fascinating as that is, I believe this will be much more fascinating. Then I remembered the one thing Merribeth asked of us.
Please don't tell her about Sam.
What is it?
Madison, would you mind fetching us some water? I feel lost at times without Mrs. Hill.
Yes, but
And then I will tell you all in confidence the details of my conversation with the president.
okay, you better.
She got up and headed towards the kitchen on the next floor of the house. It's visible from my desk, and with the door open, she could see it and didn't have to question its location. When she finished ascending the staircase and turned on the faucet, Philip leaned closer to me.
Okay, I had already brought the president's case to your attention. What really caused your change in expression, and why couldn't you tell Madison as well as me?
I think I know who kidnapped her father.